We've been talking about the clinical research workforce, and we simply must address the lack of principal investigators and sub investigators in clinical research and what that trend is going to do to the industry, but also how to fix it, I think, is the more important part. That's what I'm talking about today with Carlos Orantes, the CEO of Alcanza Research. He has some very interesting thoughts about it not being in front of medical students, clinical research not being in front of medical students, and asking the question, do we have a perception problem around ethics of clinical research? I think it's a very intriguing conversation, and he has a great story about it. So enjoy.
So, a serious issue facing the industry is that what's forecasted to become a crisis in the lack of investigators. And when I was speaking with Denise Snyder, she said that it isn't that bad at AMCs because research is often part of the job at university hospitals, but many view it actually as a frightening reality at independent sites. What do you think the industry can do to help this, since it seems medical schools don't stress the importance of clinical research, despite the fact that it's how they get new medicines to treat their patients?
So it's interesting when I hear you say that medical schools don't stress the importance of clinical research. I'll actually share a real story, and I won't say what university it was. It's in the Midwest, where the president of a specific class, who I met on an airplane ride, was intrigued about clinical research, and he asked me, "Would you come and do a presentation to speak lightly on drug development?" The whole drug development pathway, and then focus in on clinical research. And I was elated. I said, I would love to. We went back and forth. I gave him a couple of outlines on the topics that he had to put it in front of a committee, and the committee shot it down and said that this could be construed as conflict of interest, and therefore they would not approve it. And I was shocked. So when I hear you say that medical schools don't stress it, I think they're actually either oblivious to it or blocking it because they don't understand it. So I think that is an absolute must that we as an industry need to figure out, whether it's through pharma or through the FDA, some channel to really get this in front of medical students. Because remember, this was a medical student in a DO program. He was the president of his class, and he went to lobby for this. So it's not me coming out of nowhere saying, I would love to go present on clinical research. They were asking for it, and we were shot down. So I think that's a problem that we need to, but the bigger issue is, yes, there is a dwindling pool of investigators in our industry, and it's not unusual. When you have sort of the medical or the technical expert, the same thing is happening for veterinarians in earlier part of drug development and preclinical, non-clinical research. So what we need to do as an organization, as an industry, is anticipate what is our need as this industry continues to grow, but what are the ways that we can do, short-term and long-term actions to mitigate this problem? And until we actually accept that we have a challenge or a problem, nobody is really approaching it with very specific action items. They're just hoping that it gets better, but we know it won't unless we do something specific about it.
Your idea for something about a larger body would be so important. I mean, I was so hopeful for a minute that she suddenly got clinical research into a medical school. And I also, because I started out in oncology, it was like 18, 20 years ago, I saw that that clinical research was baked into the training of oncologists,
Mhm.
I guess during their postdocs. And I see that actually a little bit less on the oncology side even now, as if it just seems to me that physicians are strapped in medical schools are strapped with so little time, such a time deficit that they don't know what to cut. And it's kind of like us cutting physical education or something very important out of our schooling. And now we're cutting clinical research out of medical schools or never putting it in. I don't really get it. Um, yeah.
So
We used to approach physicians about doing medical research, community physicians, and we actually had many cases where they said no to being on a clinical trial on something. And I think in this case it was rivaroxaban. And so, but when it got approved, they were some of the first people to start writing prescriptions for it. Now, like, do you not have cognitive dissonance over this?
And the interesting thing, Christine, is that we also have medical practices that we work with in various ways who will come to us and they see the value of clinical research, not just being able to offer additional treatment options to their patient database. There's also a way to monetize their time and involvement. But the third one is the one that's most appealing. They believe they can attract new talent into their practices if they show that they're involved in research. So here again, you've got physicians that went through the med schools, they're in practice, in industry, and they want to get in research for various reasons. So they're another stakeholder, but where are these people coming from? They're coming from med school, most likely, right? And so I think we have an opportunity to either create some type of I don't want to say a committee because committees don't always do what we need them to do, right? But some kind of an initiative where maybe we start small with some med schools and then you get other med schools together to see this is what we've done and this is the benefit. Because I've heard it a lot that med schools think pharma has a conflict of interest. I think that's where it's stemming from, that they're going to push clinical research because they want to push pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it's the FDA that's requiring this testing. It's not the pharmas. The pharma companies would love to take this to market without navigating the FDA pathway. So we have to do a lot of that up front. Now, what do we do in the meantime? Because we know that's going to take forever, probably beyond my lifetime, perhaps. So for us, we're actually taking the bull by the horns and going to the community, and we have to find research naive physicians, which we know there's more of them. There is burnout that's happening on their side of the industry, whether they're in medical practice, working at a hospital, a university, or a combination thereof. So we actually set up dedicated trainers for investigators within Alcanza. And I think that's something that, many of us in the industry have done for other positions like coordinators. There's a lot of companies that have drawn from EMTs, adjacent industries, to bring them into research. And so we're doing the same thing by bringing in physicians, advanced practice providers, whether it's nurse practitioners or PAs, that don't have any exposure to research. But then we need to train them properly. We need to help them navigate through the process. So that's something that we made a recent investment to do that. And it's the experience that our newest investigators are having versus the experience of the ones from before when we didn't have it. It's night and day, right? And so I really would encourage companies to look at, okay, this is a problem. It is going to probably not get resolved quickly. So what do we do in the meantime? We've got to have short-term actions and as well as long-term.
Love it. And it's why it's so important then that we have training programs for the site staff to support the new investigators. And I always used to tell, when I worked at a site, to say, you are an expert in clinical research, you've been trained up. You are part of the training for a physician. The physician is not an expert in clinical research yet, right? Until they're trained up.
Sure. And in fact, I'll expand on that point because I think physicians need to be trained not just how to be investigators, sub-investigators, but also they are also going to be part of the training of new coordinators, new research assistants, or other investigators, just as much as this coordinators need to be aware that when a physician comes into your point, they have to be part of the training and onboarding process. So it's really symbiotic. And the faster and better we can do this, people then all can do their share. And then we have a much better experience, not just with the patient, but also amongst the teams that are working on these studies together at the sites.
Oh, extremely well said. Thank you.